Representative Garibay and Senator Huckadell, and ranking leaders, Mr. Belinsky, Representative Belinsky. I'm Senator Tony Hwang, represent 28th District, comprising of Fairfield, Easton, Newtown, Sandy Hook, and portions of Bethel. I stand before you in following Ms. Covell in support of the Alzheimer respite bill. I think it's really important to recognize that this is a bill that this committee, a committee that I'm incredibly fond of, because I don't think there's a bill you propose here that is a bad one. I think the biggest challenge you have is funding. And I applaud the bipartisan collaborative effort that you undertake in this committee. You could teach a lot of other people in this building how it's done to the commitment of our aging population. But that being said, I think it's important that funding for Alzheimer respite care continues. I've been in the General Assembly 15 years. I have seen respite funding struggle to get its due. And one of the challenges I remember is, as it relates to Alzheimer's, is caregivers reminded me when I met them in advocacy, is caregivers are too exhausted. They are too overwhelmed in being able to care for their loved ones, to be able to come up and testify. And the Alzheimer's Association of Connecticut does a fantastic job in their advocacy, because many of their advocates have experienced that kind of burden and challenge. But we don't get to see Alzheimer's patients come before you and recognize the incredible challenge, not only emotional, but also the physical challenge of caring for loved ones, being a caregiver for those impacted by Alzheimer's. I think the respite care is critical. One of the things that I remember from listening to Eleanor Wilbur, Representative Wilbur is the granddaughter of Robert Frost, and she represented the Fairfield Bridgeport section many, many years before my time. And she was impacted by polio, and her husband was impacted by Alzheimer's, very early stage before we as a society recognize its devastating impact. Even in a wheelchair, she was stubborn, and she was fighting for her husband and fighting for the Alzheimer caregivers and patients alike. And I'll never forget that, because she reminded me that caregivers are also constituents, and they themselves, if they don't get respite support, they themselves will get sick.
Thank you so
So,
much, Senator Wong.
Thank you. And I think, if I may, I'd be happy to take some questions, but I hope in my support of this that I'm able to share with you the stories and the challenges of those that are unable to appear before you, that desperately need the help. And I will say this as well, and I'll leave on this note, is Alzheimer's to me is the cruelest of disease. Because even though we may have physical ailments, blood pressure, and all the other physical challenges, a broken leg, with Alzheimer's, you lose memory. And for us as humans, for us on a relationship basis, the inability to remember your loved ones and those special moments that make us uniquely human, it's got to be one of the hardest things for caregivers to go through. That a person that they love and care for continuously do not recognize them. So again, I'm a big supporter of funding it, and I think we need to continue to fund it. I want to thank the committee's leadership last year for leading the Ombudsman initiative to be an advocate for those caregivers. But again, I want to thank this committee for its leadership in representing the aging population. And I'm happy to take any additional questions. And I appreciate the indulgence of times, because the caregivers that I'm trying to speak for are the real heroes out there.
We thank you very much for coming and for giving the people a voice, those that are afflicted with Alzheimer's, caring for Alzheimer's, and we really appreciate your coming today and speaking for them. Are there any questions? Rep. Belinsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a question, but my gratitude. The stories that you relay are familiar to all of us in this committee. This is what we do. And it's interesting because at public hearings, sometimes we can get a little bit tangled up in the minutia and where we're going to find the funding and things like that. But the human toll is pretty is pretty significant, and I appreciate your giving voice to that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Rev.
Any other-
Zabaliskie, if I may, when I talk about people that leave lasting impressions and educate us on the responsibilities and the love, the unconditional love that we give to our family members, Representative Zabaliskie, I must, at the risk of embarrassing you, you are the epitome of that in your loving care of both of your parents. And I have seen the challenges and the struggle and the emotional roller coaster that you have undergone. So I think when I talk about those families, I include you. I include your family members that give up their time, effort, and would do it 100 times over. I applaud you, and I compliment you, and I have great respect and thank you. But you are among hundreds of thousands out there that go through this, and they're prideful and they're stubborn. But at the same time, they have also reached their limits and cried out for help. And we, in our funding priorities, budgeting is about priorities. And for me, being able to care for our aging population who have contributed and made a contribution to our society, I think it's our responsibility as a society and as a legislative body to do the same in their aging times.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Hwang.
Thank you.